Okay, get ready, because today we're going deep into the world of AI research with this paper, RetroLLM, empowering large language models to retrieve fine-grained evidence within generation.
It does sound a little intimidating.
It does, doesn't it? But the concept itself is actually pretty straightforward
Yeah,
and super cool.
really cool.
So we're going to unpack how this research proposes a way for LLMs.
Okay.
You know, those large language models like ChatGPT that everyone's talking about.
Right.
To basically fact check themselves in real time as they write.
What's really groundbreaking here is that it addresses a major issue with LLMs. Sometimes they just make stuff up, you know?
Yeah.
Researchers call it hallucinating.
Hallucinating, yeah.
And RetroLLM aims to solve this by giving LLMs the ability to access and cite specific evidence from this huge database, all while they're generating text.
So picture this. It's like having this superpowered research assistant built right into the LLM.
Exactly.
No more jumping back and forth between a search engine and your LLM. It all happens in one place.
Yeah, and it's a significant improvement over those traditional retrieval-augmented generation systems.
Right.
Or R, for short, which rely on separate search engines. Those can be slow, they can miss important details in what you're asking.
Yeah.
And sometimes they even give the LLM irrelevant information.
Okay, so help me understand this. How does RetroLM actually work? I mean, it sounds almost magical.
Well, the magic really is in some clever innovations. One is what they call hierarchical FM index constraints. It's like, think about like this super efficient indexing system, like for a library.
Right.
It allows the LLM to quickly pinpoint the exact documents and even sentences that are the most relevant to what it's writing, even in a database with billions of words.
So instead of having to go through this entire library, the LLM has a map that takes it straight to the right shelf,
Exactly.
the right book, even the right page.
Precisely.
That's amazing.
And it gets even more impressive.
Okay.
They also developed something called forward-looking constrained decoding. This lets the LLM sort of peek ahead while it's writing.
Interesting.
You know, it considers how relevant potential future sentences and paragraphs are to make sure that the evidence it's using is going to fit in with the overall direction of the text.
So it's like having a writer who can plan out their whole argument.
Yes.
And figure out what evidence they're going to need before they even start writing each sentence.
You got it.
That's incredible.
And because of these innovations, RetroLM is really efficient. It uses a lot fewer tokens than traditional methods.
Hold on, back up for a second. Remind me, what are tokens again?
Good point. Tokens are they're like the fundamental building blocks of text for LLMs.
Okay.
Think of them like the individual words or punctuation marks that make up a sentence. Using fewer tokens means that the LLM can process and generate text way faster. It saves time and computing power.
So fewer tokens equals greater efficiency.
Right.
Which is good for everyone, right?
Right.
I mean, faster results, less energy consumption.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
And when they tested RetroLM, they found that the size of the base LM actually made a difference too. The larger LLMs, the ones with billions or even trillions of parameters, they generally did better.
That makes sense. It's like having a team of expert researchers working on a problem versus just having one.
Right, it's a great analogy.
More brain power, more insights.
More brain power, yeah, definitely. And another interesting finding from the research is that there's this sweet spot for how much evidence an LLM actually needs for certain tasks.
Oh, interesting.
Specifically for tasks that involve connecting information from multiple sources, what we call multi-hop reasoning.
Right.
Retrieving around 6 pieces of evidence seemed to be the best.
So even for LLMs, too much information
can be a bad thing.
Can be a bad thing. It's like that old saying, information overload.
Exactly. Too much evidence can actually distract the LLM and lead to less accurate results. It's about finding that right balance between enough information to be thorough, but not so much that it gets overwhelming.
Okay, so after hearing all this, RetroLM sounds incredibly promising. What are some areas where you think this could have the biggest impact?
Well, one that immediately comes to mind is research and education. Imagine a world where students and researchers have access to an AI tool that can not only summarize complex topics, but also provide the specific evidence to back up every single claim.
Talk about a game changer.
Talk about a game changer.
No more sifting through endless search results or questioning the validity of sources. It's all right there at your fingertips.
Exactly.
Pre-verified and ready to go.
It's not even just about saving time and effort. It's about fostering a deeper, more critical understanding of the material.
Okay, I see what you mean.
When you can actually see the evidence behind a claim, you're more likely to question it, analyze it, and come to your own conclusions.
That's a really important point. It's not about blindly trusting the AI. It's about using it as a tool to enhance our own critical thinking skills.
Absolutely. And this leads to another exciting application, journalism. Imagine journalists being able to fact-check their articles in real time using RetroLLM, ensuring accuracy and combating misinformation.
That's a really powerful application, especially in today's world where misinformation spreads so quickly online. Having a tool that can instantly verify claims and provide credible sources could be a game changer for journalists and readers alike.
And let's not forget about the potential for businesses.
Yeah, for sure.
Analysts could use RetroLLM to generate reports that are supported by verifiable data, making their insights more persuasive and more impactful.
I can see this being incredibly valuable in fields like finance, healthcare, and even marketing. Being able to back up your claims with solid evidence can make a huge difference in decision-making and strategy development.
The possibilities are really endless. But let's kind of shift gears for a second and maybe delve a bit deeper into some of the technical aspects of RetroLLM that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
You mentioned that the researchers found that the size of the base LLM impacted its performance with RetroLLM. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Sure. They discovered that larger LLMs, the ones with billions or even trillions of parameters, tended to perform better with RetroLLM. It's like the more computational power an LLM has, the better it's able to process and integrate information from the database.
That's right. It's almost like having a larger team of researchers working on a problem.
Right.
The more brain power you have, the more effectively you can analyze and synthesize information.
Makes sense.
But what's really interesting is that even smaller LLMs showed some promise with RetroLLM.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which suggests that the benefits of this technology might not be limited to just the most advanced and resource-intensive models.
That's encouraging to hear. It makes this technology potentially more accessible and opens up a wider range of applications.
Yeah.
Not everyone has access to the computing power needed to run those massive LLMs, so it's great to know that smaller models can still benefit from RetroLLM.
Exactly. And this brings us back to one of the key points we discussed earlier, the efficiency of RetroLLM.
Right.
Remember, it uses far fewer tokens than traditional methods, which means faster processing and lower computational costs.
Yeah.
This efficiency is crucial, especially as we move towards more complex and demanding tasks.
Right. If we want these systems to be able to handle large amounts of information quickly and effectively, we need them to be as efficient as possible. RetroLLM seems to be a big step in the right direction. But I'm curious, what about that sweet spot for the amount of evidence that you mentioned earlier? Can you explain that in a bit more detail?
Of course. The researchers discovered that for tasks involving multi-hop reasoning, where you need to connect information from various sources to reach a conclusion, retrieving around 6 pieces of evidence was the sweet spot.
Oh, interesting.
Too much information actually hindered the LLM's ability to accurately synthesize the data.
That's fascinating. It seems counterintuitive that more information could lead to less accurate results. But it makes sense when you think about it. Too much information can be overwhelming even for an AI.
Precisely. It's all about finding that right balance. You need enough information to provide context and support your claims, but not so much that it becomes a distraction.
This is a great segue into a question I've been thinking about. We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of RetroLLM, but are there any potential downsides or challenges that we need to be aware of? I mean, no technology is perfect, right?
That's a very perceptive question, and you're right. Every technology has its own set of limitations and potential challenges.
For sure.
And RetroLLM is no exception. One of the key considerations with any LLM is the data it's trained on.
You're talking about the potential for bias in the training data, right?
Exactly.
I've heard about how this can be a problem with LLMs if they're trained on data that reflects existing societal biases.
Exactly. If the data used to train RetroLLM isn't carefully curated and balanced, it could lead to biased outputs. So it's crucial that developers pay close attention to the data sources they're using and take steps to mitigate potential bias.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. If the data isn't solid and unbiased, the outputs of RetroLLM won't be reliable or trustworthy.
That's a great analogy. And this brings up another important consideration, the potential for misuse of this technology.
Okay.
Like any powerful tool, RetroLLM could be used for malicious purposes, such as generating fake news articles or manipulating people with seemingly credible but fabricated evidence.
That's a chilling thought. We've already seen how misinformation can spread rapidly online, and having a tool like RetroLLM in the wrong hands could make things even worse.
It's definitely something to be mindful of. As we develop and deploy these powerful AI technologies, we need to have robust ethical guidelines and safeguards in place to prevent misuse. And that involves not just the developers, but also the users of this technology.
It's like giving someone a powerful car without teaching them how to drive safely. We need to educate people about the potential risks and responsibilities that come with using a tool like RetroLLM.
Exactly. We need to foster a culture of responsible AI use, where people understand the potential benefits, but also the potential pitfalls of these technologies.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the human factor. It's about developing this technology responsibly and using it ethically.
That's a great way to put it. It's a shared responsibility, and it requires a collaborative effort between developers, researchers, policymakers, and the public.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic. There's so much more to explore and consider as RetroLLM and other LLMs continue to evolve.
There's always more to learn, especially in a field as dynamic and rapidly changing as artificial intelligence. But I think we've laid a solid foundation for understanding the basics of RetroLLM and its potential impact on the future of LLMs.
Agreed. I think our listeners are going to have a lot to think about after this episode. We've covered a lot of ground, from the technical details of how RetroLLM works to the broader societal implications of this technology.
It's been a great discussion, and I hope it sparked some curiosity and inspired our listeners to learn more about the exciting world of LLMs.
Me too. We'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive into RetroLLM and discuss some of the key takeaways and potential future directions for this technology. Stay tuned. Welcome back. As we've been talking about RetroLLM and all its potential in different fields, I've been thinking about how this technology might actually shape the future of LLMs themselves.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's like this feedback loop.
Yeah.
Where RetroLLM is making LLMs better.
Right.
Which then leads to even more advanced versions of RetroLLM.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really important here. RetroLLM isn't just some separate tool. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about LLMs and what they can do.
Right.
By giving them access to and control over their own information sources.
Yeah.
We're essentially opening up all these new possibilities.
It's almost like giving them this sense of self-awareness.
Right.
They're not just passively processing information and spitting out text anymore.
Yeah.
They're actively engaging with the information, tracing their own lines of reasoning and becoming more transparent in the process.
Exactly. And that increased transparency could be huge. Imagine a world where every single piece of text that an LLM generates,
Wow.
whether it's a news article or a research paper or even a creative story,
Right.
comes with this built-in trail of evidence,
Right.
showing exactly where each claim came from and how it's supported.
That would completely change how we look at information online. Right?
Absolutely.
No more blind trust or suspicion.
Yeah.
We could actually see where every claim came from
Yeah.
and make our own decisions about whether it's believable or not.
And it goes beyond just credibility, too. It could help us understand how LLMs actually think
Oh, interesting.
and how they come to their conclusions.
Yeah.
By looking at those evidence trails, we can get insights into their reasoning process, spot any potential biases, and even figure out ways to make them more accurate and reliable.
It's like looking inside the AI's brain. We're not just accepting what they tell us at face value. We're actually seeing the mechanics behind it all.
Exactly. And this deeper understanding could lead to a more collaborative relationship between humans and LLMs.
Okay.
We might start seeing them less like these mysterious black boxes and more like, powerful partners in our search for knowledge.
Now that's a future I'm excited about.
Yeah, right.
But, of course, with any new technology, there are going to be some bumps in the road,
Sure.
challenges and potential downsides.
For sure.
We've talked about data quality and ethical guidelines, but what are some other things we need to think about as LLMs evolve with technologies like RetroLLM?
Well, one thing is making sure that these advanced LLMs are accessible and useful for everyone, not just a select few.
Right.
As these systems get more complex, there's a risk that they could end up being controlled by just a handful of powerful organizations, the ones that have the resources to build and maintain them.
So it's not just about building the tech, it's about making sure everyone benefits from it.
Exactly. It's about making sure that it doesn't make existing inequalities worse.
Right.
And that's going to require a lot of cooperation and open discussion between researchers, policymakers, and industry leaders.
Okay.
We need to be smart about how we encourage the development of these technologies while also making sure that everyone can use them.
And it's not just about being able to use the technology itself, right? It's about having access to the data and the skills to use it effectively.
Exactly.
We need to make sure people from all backgrounds have the chance to learn what they need to know to participate in this AI-powered world.
I completely agree. And this brings up another thing we need to think about as LLMs become more powerful and are more a part of our lives.
Okay.
What's the potential impact on human creativity and critical thinking?
That's something I think about a lot. Will we get so used to relying on these AI systems that we forget how to think for ourselves?
Yeah.
To come up with our own ideas to solve problems without just using algorithms?
That's a valid concern and one we need to take seriously. But I think the key is finding the right balance. We shouldn't be afraid of these technologies. We should see them as tools that can make us better, not replace us.
So it's not about humans versus machines. It's about humans and machines working together.
Exactly. And I think RetroLLM is a great example of that. It's not about replacing human researchers or writers. It's about giving them this powerful tool that can make them better at what they do and free them up to focus on the things that really require human creativity and insight.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly.
With RetroLLM, we're not just handing people answers, we're giving them the tools to find the answers themselves.
Right.
To become more independent and to push the boundaries of what we know even further.
That's a great analogy. And I think it really sums up what we've been talking about today. RetroLLM isn't just about technology. It's a catalyst for human progress. It can empower us to learn faster, think more critically, create more meaningful things, and ultimately build a future where AI and human intelligence work together.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
So as we wrap things up, I want to encourage our listeners to keep exploring, to stay curious, and to be a part of the conversation about the future of LLMs and their impact on the world.
I couldn't agree more. The future of AI is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play in making sure it benefits everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into RetroLLM. We hope it's made you want to learn more, think differently, and embrace the possibilities of this incredible new era of AI.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.
And that's a wrap for today's deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration into the world of AI.